Okay, good afternoon officially, everyone. We just have hit noon, and to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm just going to dive right in. We'll start with introductions, so hopefully if folks are joining us from other calls, they're not going to miss a whole lot. So thank you. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining us and spending some time to chat with the project team on the Kalispell bypass study. And we really appreciate it. So thank you in advance. For those of you I have not emailed or spoken with in person, my name is Becca McLean. I am with Big Sky Public Relations and work on behalf of the Montana Department of Transportation, as well as KLJ Engineering on this project. We have folks here on behalf of the project team, as I mentioned, that are looking forward to connecting with you today and tomorrow during our open houses. Specifically, we have folks again from MDT and KLJ representing this US 93 study. So with that, I will have Dylan McLean with KLJ Engineering do a quick intro of himself. Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Becca. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Becca said, my name is Dylan McLean. No relation to Becca, though, for clear up any confusion there. I am the design project manager from KLJ, who was consulted by MDT to perform this study.
Thanks, Dylan. As I mentioned, we also have folks from the Department of Transportation. We have Bob Vosen and Fred Benty. Bob, if you want to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to have a moment to visit with us and kind of get some updated information on the Kalispell bypass. Exciting projects, all of them, and how they impact our community. I'm the administrator for the Department of Transportation, and as a note, I am a resident of the Flathead Valley and live just on the south edge of Kalispell. So again, I just want to take time to thank everybody for joining us, and glad we're able to have this opportunity and a way to share information with you.
Thanks, Bob. And Fred, if you want to say hi as well.
Yeah, hi, this is Fred Benty. I'm the project design manager. I work in the MDT consultant design section, and I work with the consultant on preparing the design and the plans for the project.
Wonderful. Thanks, Fred. And last but certainly not least, I want to intro another member of the Big Sky PR team, Katie Cleets. She is here to help facilitate the Q&A system that we'll be using to monitor questions as they come in and chatting through at the end of the presentation. We'll touch on this briefly again in a second, but Katie, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. And as Becca said, I'll be helping to facilitate the Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions as we're going throughout the presentation, we will be addressing those at the end, but you can add it to the Q&A system so you don't forget it, and so we can make sure that we get everything teed up for you. Please use the Q&A and not the chat. The Q&A, it looks like two different speech bubbles at the bottom of your screen.
Thanks, Katie. And again, this is Becca speaking. I am serving as the communications manager for the duration of this project and the whole Kalispell bypass, actually. So if you have questions about this project or others, I certainly can be of help. My email will be at the end of the slide deck if you ever need to reach out after this presentation or otherwise. And thank you all for your flexibility as we host this meeting virtually. I know sometimes it's challenging, so we appreciate your flexibility there. We will be recording this presentation and placing it on the Kalispell Bypass webpage if you want to revisit or send it to folks after our presentation today. Also, I want to note we're holding a second open house tomorrow in Kalispell. This will be in person. It's at the Hampton Inn from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. In order to just provide a different avenue for folks to participate. Please feel free. You're welcome to attend both. There's not going to be a formal presentation like this at the in-person event, but we'll certainly have similar and overlapping content to what you see now. However, I will note there will be an added interactive element just for another way for us to gather feedback at the in-person. So again, we highly encourage you to attend that or tell your neighbors if they're interested and they can't make it today. We'd love to see you, and the project team will be there to answer questions and chat with you face-to-face. Again, it's from 4 to 7 at the Hampton Inn, and you can stop by any time. You're certainly not obligated to be there the whole time. So with that intro, thanks for your patience. I'm going to pass it to Bob to kick us off.
Thanks, Becca. As you can see on your screen, Vision Zero is a multi-pronged initiative with the ultimate goal of eliminating deaths and injuries on Montana's highways. And without good roads, bridges, and intersections, traveling safely and efficiently throughout Montana would be very difficult. Having good roads, bridges, and other parts of our transportation system, as well as educating drivers on how to use them, is a critical component in building strong communities in a strong state. As you can see on this slide, there's 4 components to Vision Zero, the 4 E's, if you will: education, enforcement, engineering, and emergency medical response. These elements all fit into our into us as we're trying to guide our initiatives and our roadway projects to ensure they're as safe as possible. So MDT asks that all drivers do their part by slowing down, paying attention, wearing a seatbelt, and not driving impaired. And again, I want to stress the paying attention one. Please do not text and drive. And finally, don't be impaired while driving. These are critical components to helping MDT with our goal of always allowing drivers and travelers to get to their destination safely. And as one of the highly traveled roadways in the Flathead Valley, the Kalispell bypass and the study of it and the project as a whole must align with our Vision Zero goal. And we strongly believe the results of this study will help guide us and help us to achieve those goals. So Dylan, would you like to give us a little background on the project, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Bob. So let's back up to 2019 when KLJ studied the BASECAMP Drive intersection and presented conceptual options to the public. These options included the existing roundabout you see today and 3 grade separated interchange concepts in a compact quad design, an extended quad, and a southwest loop design. You can find these conceptual designs on the Kalispell Bypass webpage. So in the time since this study, MDT has advanced other sections along the Kalispell Bypass, including the Foys Lake Road interchange constructed last year and the Airport Road interchange, which is currently proceeding through design. If you have questions about these projects, please reach out to Becca, who will provide multiple ways to contact her here at the end of the presentation. So as a result of this 2019 study, a bottleneck traffic issue was identified at the Kalispell Bypass and US 93 intersection that has an impact on BASECAMP Drive and issues that need to be resolved before comprehensive intersection solutions can be proposed. Therefore, MDT proceeded with this additional traffic study and analysis. This study primarily took place in 2021, beginning last summer, and reaching our final concepts at the end of the year. And so to reiterate, the study is taking place due to a bottleneck traffic issue found at the Kalispell Bypass and US 93 intersection that has an impact on BASECAMP Drive intersection. And that prompted us to take a closer look before moving forward with multiple intersection options. And so now I'll turn it back over to Bob so that he can give a brief overview on the big picture of the Kalispell Bypass.
Thanks, Dylan. I think everyone on the call is aware that Kalispell Bypass, or the US 93 alternate route, or just simply the bypass, is an 8-mile stretch of highway that goes around the west side of Kalispell. And it was originally designed to provide a high volume route in addition to US 93 going right through the center of Kalispell. The first segment of the bypass opened in 2008, and but the first projects only made it to what I referred to as a half pass and got from the south end to Highway 2. In 2016, we were able to complete the project that opened the bypass for its entire length. And since then, we've begun working on expanding what were originally designed as interim projects. And that was the first 3 projects on the southern end that had the roundabouts in them. Those projects were designed to allow us to get a roadway built, but at the time, MDT and the state didn't have enough money to build the final configuration of full interchanges at those locations. So the roundabouts were chosen as an acceptable way to get the road completed without having to save up the money for the entirety of the project. So we're now at the phase where we're going back through and we're expanding to final build out. And in fact, as you can see on the screen right there, the construction is nearing completion on the Foys Lake Road interchange. We've got a little bit of work to finish in the spring. We're going to be replacing the pavement on the two northbound lanes, and there's some additional concrete work to be done, and obviously landscaping, but it's carrying traffic in its final configuration right now. There's just additional work to be done. So the airport road intersection where the roundabout is now is the next project that is being designed as we speak. We're not sure what that delivery looks like, as we don't know when we'll get that project constructed. Hopefully it's going to be in the range of 5 years or a little more. It's funding dependent. The new IIJA bill is out there and in place, but we're still waiting for the actual funding associated with that bill, and construction costs, like everything else, continue to go up. So we've got to figure out when we can get it delivered, but that is the next project that it will come to fruition on the bypass. And then this study on US 93 intersection with the bypass and the BASECAMP intersection with the bypass are going to help us to identify concepts and the designs, and construction on those two projects will be outside of that 5-year window. So I'm going to let Dylan explain a little bit more of what we found with these studies going forward.
Yeah, thanks again, Bob. And yeah, hope everybody can bear with me here as we kind of dive into the meat of this study at the Kalispell bypass and US 93 intersection. So KLJ and MDT understand that the US 93 alternate route, or the bypass, is a major travel vein providing a faster connection between the south and north ends of the valley, with several major access points into the city of Kalispell. Improving this vital entry and exit point for the bypass will simply be another effort by MDT to enhance the overall transportation network. From this study, we identified traffic patterns and operations, crash analyses and trends, inventoried public and private access points, and also gathered local landowner input. Reviewing traffic patterns, the greatest traffic volumes are traveling in both the north and south directions on US 93. Travelers heading north on US 93 and turning left to the bypass also had a significant volume, as well as right turning off of the bypass and heading south. These traffic challenges create major delays during peak travel hours that will only increase over time as additional development and connections are established. As far as safety goes, on average, this intersection experiences 15 crashes per year, with roughly 3 of them resulting in injuries, again, on average. The most common types of crashes are rear-end collisions and crossing or T-bone crashes. These crash types are likely a result of increased congestion at the signalized intersection due to more traffic using the bypass. Our access inventory identified nearly 30 business and private access points within the 1 mile study area, many of which located just south of the intersection of US 93 and the bypass. This dense spacing of access points likely increases the number of travelers in proximity to the intersection and creates additional conflict points. So with these findings in mind, MDT and KLJ developed 5 potential alternative concepts to address the issues found in the study. So we will now walk through each of these 5 concepts, and I want you to keep in mind the key study findings: traffic north and south on US 93, traffic turning onto and off of the bypass, and crash tendencies at the intersection along with access points. So in this first slide, I guess I'd like to just make a general comment that each of these concept graphics, as we walk through alternatives 1 through 5, is rotated. And so north is pointing to the right, and you can see the bypass route there is heading up off the screen. Alternative number 1 is the no build option. Now, this option is the cheapest and also the least effective to address the issues at the intersection. Certain adjustments could be made to the signal timing that may address certain congestion issues, but this is a temporary solution. This option also has no impacts on accesses. So we do have videos or simulations here showing each of these options and some of the traffic operations. They're based on existing traffic volumes and anticipated growth, including several potential high density developments to project traffic volumes approximately 20 years out, or really what you're looking at here is traffic in 2045. And for all of these simulation videos, we will generally be following the same camera angles, first starting south of the intersection, looking north at US 93, traveling into Kalispell, then panning to look west of the bypass, and then finally moving to the north and looking back south. So in this first video, it shows alternative 1, or the no build option. And as you can clearly see, traffic is severely backed up for the US 93 northbound traffic attempting to turn left onto the bypass, and for traffic attempting to turn right off the bypass and head south on US 93. This video also highlights the potential for the most common type of crashes, being rear end collisions, to increase with additional traffic. Zero improvements to this intersection will create overwhelming queues and delays for vehicles traveling in nearly all directions, and does nothing to address the issues we've gone through already. So now let's move on to alternative 2. So alternative 2, as shown on your screen, is dual northbound left turn lanes. The primary addition in this option is an added left turn lane onto the bypass for traffic heading north on US 93. Another addition in this option, and included with all the options, is a right turn acceleration merge lane for traffic turning off the bypass and heading south on US 93. A right turn lane was also added to each option for traffic heading south on US 93 turning onto the bypass. And finally, the east approach in this option on the other side from the bypass would be built out with dedicated turn lanes. The traffic signals will remain basically the same, with the addition of more signal heads for the second left turn lane and other added turn lanes. And generally, the intersection would function much like it does today, with additional space for left turning vehicles to be stored before turning on to the bypass. And right turning vehicles off the bypass would no longer stop at the intersection, but rather turn into an acceleration lane and merge into traffic heading south on US 93. Pedestrian crossing at the intersection is also generally the same with this option. You will notice that a portion of the center two-way turn lane would be eliminated with a striped and raised median, resulting in several accesses to become right in and right out only, and others requiring complete relocation. Due to the additional lanes, the overall intersection footprint is larger than it currently is, which could potentially mean strips of additional road right-of-way may be needed to be acquired from nearby properties. And also, as you can see, this option includes a configuration that is familiar to travelers and addresses the primary issue of traffic turning onto and off the bypass. In the first angle of the video, you can see the added left turn lane, which allows for additional vehicles to be stored before clearing the intersection on a green arrow. As we pan to view the bypass here, these left turning vehicles are cleared and make their way towards the BASECAMP Drive roundabout seen in the distance. Additionally, take note of the traffic turning right off the bypass and heading south on US 93. These vehicles do not have to stop at the intersection, instead utilizing that acceleration merge lane to enter into traffic and thereby eliminating those long queues we saw from the first simulation. So let's move on now to alternative 3, where we start to enter unfamiliar territory for many travelers in Montana. So alternative number 3 is a displaced northbound left turn lane. There are several similar additions in this option that we saw in alternative 2, such as the right turn acceleration merge lane for traffic turning off the bypass and heading south on US 93, a right turn lane for traffic heading south on US 93 turning onto the bypass. And the east approach is also built out again with dedicated turn lanes. The key difference is located just south of the intersection in a displaced left turn lane. Now, what is a displaced left turn lane? This unique intersection design is where left turning vehicles heading north on US 93 cross over to the other side of the opposing southbound traffic in advance of the main intersection. This concept adds additional storage for left turning vehicles, in essence, dual turn lanes, and allows for left turns as well as north and south through traffic to move through the main intersection at the same time. What makes this option function efficiently are the signals at the crossover and main intersection working together to minimize stops. So why would we look at an option with a displaced left turn lane? First of all, it improves safety by reducing and spreading out the number of potential conflict points where vehicles may cross paths at the main intersection. It also increases the efficiency of this intersection, allowing for simultaneous movements of left turns and opposing through traffic with only 2 signal phases instead of a typical 4, reducing the overall queues, the buildup, and delay times. This option also provides better synchronization by eliminating the left turn signal phases and syncing the main intersection and crossover signals to allow for north and south through traffic to spend less time stopped, which will improve overall travel times. In addition to the benefits this option provides, we recognize there are challenges too, such as maintenance, especially with snow plowing, right-of-way and access impacts, and unfamiliar driver expectations, as I don't believe any of these types of intersections exist in Montana today. Pedestrian crossings would generally remain the same, with increased crossing times simply due to larger intersection footprint. And adding more lanes and raised medians would also result in several accesses becoming right in and right out only, and others to be relocated completely. Additional strips of right-of-way acquired from nearby properties may also be required to fit this configuration. However, this option does address the primary issues at the intersection: traffic turning onto and off the bypass, shortening queues and delays, and also reducing the crash conflict points. So here in this unique alternative for the simulation, in the first angle, you're viewing the crossover signal just south of the main intersection, where traffic intending to turn left onto the bypass will actually cross and travel adjacent to opposing traffic. And bear in mind, these opposing travel directions will be separated by raised medians, which are not shown in the simulation video. Simultaneously, while the left turning vehicles are turning onto the bypass, the US 93 southbound and northbound traffic is also moving through the intersection, demonstrating the reduced number of signal phases we discussed earlier. Again, also take note of the traffic turning right off the bypass and heading south on US 93 via that acceleration merge lane that enters south of the crossover signal. And as represented here, the queues and delays are kept to a minimum by effectively coordinating both crossover and main intersection signals. Okay, now we will move to alternative number 4, now that I've got you warmed up to these unfamiliar concepts. So alternative number 4 is a green T intersection at grade. And the at grade part is important here, as you will see in alternative 5. So again, you will see several similar additions in this option that we have previously seen: a right turn acceleration merge lane for traffic turning off the bypass and heading south on US 93, the right turn lane for traffic heading south and turning onto the bypass, and those dual left turn lanes for traffic heading north on 93, turning onto the bypass. A few of the key differences we see are what makes this intersection a green T, and you're likely wondering, what is a green T? Well, this green T, or also called a continuous green T intersection, is a design typically reserved for a 3-leg or T intersection. In this design, one major street direction of travel, the top side of the T, or in this case, the US 93 traffic traveling north, can pass through the intersection without stopping. And the other direction of travel, US 93 heading south, is controlled normally by a signal. The left turning vehicles off the bypass will use a channelized acceleration merge lane traveling north onto US 93. For all the other movements, the intersection functions just like a conventional signalized intersection, with the exception of the east side approach. Because this concept is generally reserved for T intersections, the east side approach becomes a right in and right out only access, and a dedicated right turn lane for traffic heading north on US 93 has been added. So what are the benefits of this unique option? First, it improves safety by channelizing left turning vehicles from the bypass and removing one whole movement, US 93 northbound, from the signalized intersection to reduce conflict points. It also increases efficiency by allowing one direction of travel, again, US 93 northbound, to move through the intersection without stopping, and as a result, allows more green time to be provided for other movements, reducing the overall queues and delay times. Again, we recognize the challenges presented with this option too, such as maintenance, right-of-way, and access impacts, especially for the east side approach, and unfamiliar driver expectations once again. Similar to other options, several accesses would be impacted by becoming right in and right out only and relocated completely. The pedestrian crossing would also likely require a high intensity activated crosswalk beacon or a HAWK system to cross the non-stopping northbound traffic. This system is a traffic control signal device that stops traffic for pedestrians, similar to what is being installed with the revitalized rail trail project across US 93 closer to downtown Kalispell. So you can see a trend developing with these options. They have all been developed to address the primary issues at the intersection: traffic turning onto and off the bypass, shortening queues and delays, and reducing crash conflict points. Now in this video, from the first angle, you see those dual northbound left turn lanes beginning to queue up traffic while vehicles traveling south on US 93 move through the intersection. Both of these movements are treating this just like a conventional intersection. Once again, traffic turning right off the bypass heading south on US 93 will enter into traffic by an acceleration merge lane. And then throughout the simulation, you also notice vehicles traveling north on US 93 not stopping because they have that free flow or through movement at the intersection. Also remember that any vehicles turning left off the bypass and traveling north on US 93 will enter into traffic by an acceleration merge lane. However, none are being shown here due to the relatively low volumes making this turn. And finally, you can see the east side approach has been converted to right in and right out only access. So let's move on to alternative number 5. So alternative number 5 is a green T intersection again, just like alternative 4. However, this option includes a grade separation at the intersection. As you can assume, a grade separated option is one where one of the roads is lifted above the other. And in this case, the two US 93 southbound travel lanes are lifted above the bypass intersection with retaining walls and a bridge. This option functions almost identical to the green T we saw in alternative 4, but in addition to northbound traffic on US 93 not stopping, southbound traffic also does not have to stop as they travel over the top of the intersection via the bridge. As some of you may recall, this is not the only grade separated option to be considered for this intersection. As many years ago, during the initial planning of the bypass, a northbound flyover ramp for vehicles turning left off US 93 and onto the bypass was analyzed. Ultimately, the grade separated flyover ramp, in addition to our alternative number 5 shown here, will not be carried forward for consideration due to several immense challenges associated with these options. These challenges, including significant right-of-way impacts to nearby properties, including access relocation or removal and elimination of building structures entirely, reduced possibility to build out or modify the intersection in the future, and limited ability to move oversized loads through the intersection due to overpass clearances, all contribute to the significantly higher costs to separate the roadways and add bridges. While these grade separated options appear to address all the issues experienced at the intersection, they come with challenges deemed too significant to overcome at this time and will not be recommended with this study. So in conclusion, we've gone over these at least 4 feasible intersection alternatives that appear to address all the issues identified during our study, including the traffic turning onto and off the bypass, shortening queues and delays, and reducing crash conflict points. So to be clear, we have not yet selected one of these alternatives as the final configuration, and our hope is to present the available options to you so you are aware of what is being reviewed and developed, and so we can receive feedback on the options we are discussing. An alternative will likely not be selected until later in 2022, and construction would not begin until funding is identified, which is 5 years or more out. And so now I'll turn it back over to Becca to discuss additional ways to stay involved and participate in the ongoing progress on US 93 and the Kalispell bypass.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone. I know that was a lot of information. We certainly can go back in the slide deck if you want to see something again. And as a reminder, I will be posting this on the bypass webpage if you want to go back and watch simulations or look at images. So no fear, this will certainly be available to you, as I know there's a lot of details to come through. But yeah, just to reiterate, MDT, KLJ certainly welcome and encourage feedback on these intersection alternatives. That's what we're hoping to accomplish during today and tomorrow's open house, and with any other feedback received surrounding that. Just as a reminder, we held stakeholder meetings last year with stakeholders, important folks in the community, as well as folks that have businesses and land in that surrounding area, to make sure that that was really helping guide these alternatives, as well as the traffic and crash data that Dylan mentioned. So again, please feel free to reach out to me after the meeting if for some reason your question isn't answered, or you think of something feedback or question wise after this meeting. So with that, as mentioned, I will leave the screen here for a little bit so that folks can write down my email, as well as our project hotline listed there. Again, reach out anytime about this study or other Kalispell bypass projects happening, and I'm happy to help. With that, we're going to transition to our question and answer session. If you have a question and have not already typed it in the Q&A box, and again, just to reiterate, please use the Q&A little bubble box and not the chat so we can keep better track. Feel free to pop a question in there, and my colleague Katie will help direct your question to one of the project team members so we can discuss. We do have quite a bit of time scheduled to address questions, but if for some reason we don't get to your question, certainly I can follow up with you via email and get to your question, or if you don't feel comfortable answering at this time or think of something afterwards, again, just reiterating, you're welcome to email me and we can get that answered. So with that, I will turn it over to Katie and see if we have a couple questions we can start with.
Thanks, Becca. We do. We have 3 questions that have come in, and certainly, hopefully, we will have some more and are happy to address those. So the first I will give to you, Dylan. There's a kind of a 2-part question from Mr. Davis. So he's stating MDT is constructing more and more roundabouts around the state because, as data supports, roundabout improve traffic safety and flow. So his question, Dylan, is why not improve these roundabouts or enhance to a multi-lane roundabout instead of replacing them with expensive alternatives?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I'll do my best to answer this one, and then I'd actually open it up to Bob afterwards to expand. But really the main reason, at least on the rest of the bypass route, that MDT is looking to replace these roundabouts is so that it can, in essence, become that full bypass route or uninterrupted with an intersection type of route. And I think the second part of your question is why isn't a multi-lane roundabout being considered as a solution for this intersection? I think falls back to the reason why we eliminated alternative 5 in that because it's on a high-speed multi-lane facility, right away becomes a challenge, and cost definitely becomes a challenge, as well as the business accesses and other private accesses definitely lead into a lot of issues with trying to place a multi-lane roundabout at this particular location on US 93.
Yeah, Dylan, this is Bob, and I just want to add to that. The other challenge is that I'm not sure how our traffic analysis works out, Dylan, if you took a look at the volume of traffic, but if we're running someplace north of 25,000 cars a day up the bypass and over 10 to 15,000 cars a day staying on Highway 93, I'm not sure that a roundabout is the right solution, even a multi-lane roundabout, to carry traffic volumes at that level, especially with the volume of traffic going from northbound to westbound, or northbound interstate traffic trying to turn across and go onto the bypass. That heavy traffic right there would be such, it would make it very difficult for southbound traffic to have an opportunity to enter the roundabout, whether they wanted to go onto the bypass or through. So I think that the traffic roundabouts are a great solution. They're extremely effective, Kevin, as you stated. They're super for improving traffic safety, but they aren't the answer to every intersection. I think there's just some additional challenges at this intersection based on high volume of traffic that would be really challenging. There's some better options. And then finally, the last part, as Dylan alluded to, is to get a roundabout of that size to be a fairly significant footprint on those corners, which is a highly desirable and already to a great extent built out intersection.
Yeah, and Bob, you brought up a good point actually with the traffic volumes. So through our study, we did identify those. And for example, the traffic volumes that you see on the bypass today, and utilizing the multi-lane roundabout at BASECAMP Drive, projected conditions would put the volumes there at about 15,000 vehicles per day. And on US 93, we're looking at over double that, or about 30 to 35,000 vehicles per day. And so you get into those really high volume traffic situations, and the roundabouts wouldn't function in their proper ways.
That's great additional context. Thanks so much, Dylan and Bob. I think that answers Kevin's questions, and certainly if there's follow-up, let us know and we're happy to address it. The next is a great one for you, Dylan, talking about the traffic models that you showed us. So Will's question is, are traffic models based on peak traffic during the day, or are they representing a typical amount of traffic circulating through the intersection?
Yeah, that is a great question. And so our traffic models were based off the peak travel times, specifically the AM and the PM peaks, as these are when most of the vehicles usually aligning with the work schedules in the morning and then in the evenings. That's when most traffic is traveling through this intersection. And so those were the times that we used in our study, because in essence, this is when the intersection breaks down, is when you see that significantly higher volume of traffic versus the normal usage throughout the rest of the day.
Thanks, Dylan. And if there's nothing further, I think we can move to Sherry's question. So Sherry is wondering for option 4, she thinks, so maybe Becca, we could go to that slide. And she is wondering, with only the southern flow with a light, and it was said that there would be a stop for pedestrians. She's asking if it would be safe for pedestrians to cross if people are driving at 55 or more miles per hour. So Dylan, could you maybe talk a little bit about that pedestrian safety and any considerations there?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the first thing that I would mention is, currently there's a pedestrian intersection crossing at this intersection today. And so we already do see that pedestrian safety and the challenges associated with it, even in the current configuration. In option 4, the one you're referring to here, is the green T intersection at grade. And I think as I mentioned, the northbound traffic on US 93 in this concept is not required to stop at the intersection with a traffic signal. Now, however, there's a unique pedestrian crossing system called the Hawk system that I had mentioned, that in essence acts like a traffic signal for northbound traffic, and would be activated by pedestrians approaching the intersection and attempting to cross. The way that those systems work is essentially they flash yellow before they turn red, and allow the pedestrians enough time then to get across the intersection, so that those free flow movements that are not used to stopping in a signal would be required to pause there for pedestrians.
That's great, Dylan. Thank you. And thanks for bringing up that question, Sherry. It's a really important consideration for us to have. At this time, those were all of the questions that we had queued up. So we will certainly stay on the line in case others come through. But from here, Becca, I might just turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. As she mentioned, feel free, if you have feedback, even if it's not a question, we'd love to hear your feedback. So feel free to pop that in the chat too. We gather all that information so that the team can be aware. So if you don't have a question, but just have a comment or feedback, again, feel free to pop that in. We will stay on the call and hang out and see if there are additional comments. And I think maybe we just got another question, Katie.
We did, and there was also one in the chat that I had missed. So Dylan, back to the connection points. Chris is wondering if the bike path connects and how in any of these designs.
Yes, that's also another good question. So in each one of these designs, the bike path, as some of you are aware, does tie in or connect here at US 93. And with each one of the options, we have extended that connection. So the bike path will still connect to the intersection. And even if it might require some unique crossing solutions, we've implemented essentially the same pedestrian crossing at the intersection for where the bike path connects.
Thank you, Dylan. The next question that we had, maybe you could go back and just share a little bit more about the project history and how we got here, but somebody asked why this intersection was considered before the airport road roundabout, which bottlenecks terribly now.
So I'll go ahead and jump in on that one, Katie. This is Bob. And I think that maybe there's a little bit of confusion in the order. So let me go back to it again. And the airport road is the airport road intersection of the airport road roundabout. That interchange is the next project that will be built. We've got several things going on simultaneously here. This is a study to figure out what we want to do with this intersection and potentially base camp in the future, but we've already identified that we will be building a full interchange at the airport road roundabout, and the airport road interchange project will be the next project on the Kalispell bypass that's delivered.
Thank you, Bob. I think that's, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and then at some point in the future, this intersection will be built out, likely in conjunction with BASECAMP, but how those two intersections interact with each other is part of the reason that we had to bring this study up next. Was those two intersections are much closer to each other than the other intersections on the bypass.
Great, thank you, Bob. And as Becca had, or maybe Dylan had said really early on in this presentation, all of those planning documents and past simulations are still on that project webpage that Becca has up here in case anybody has any questions or the timing on that. And we still have everything available if you would like a little bit of a refresh. And we know there's been quite a bit of study and a lot of different projects in this area. It's pretty easy to get all of the details convoluted a little bit. We have a couple of just odds and ends of comments, so I'll just be responding to folks offline, and Becca will be sure that we send those off to the project team. But otherwise, I don't see anything in particular that we need to address at this time.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. I'm just checking if we have other questions. It looks like Sherry might have another question, Katie.
Yeah, so maybe Dylan, I'll throw this to you, and then Bob, if there's any other comments that you have after Dylan's able to respond. So Sherry had asked earlier about the stop control for pedestrians, but she's really wondering how that might be any safer than what they have now. She thinks that a stoplight might make more sense in that area.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Katie. And thanks, Sherry, for the question. I mean, pedestrian crossing at this intersection is definitely one of the things that we considered when looking at our options. The Hawk system, like we explained for that alternative four, I mean, in essence, provides that advanced warning and again, flashing and yellow to slow down before it turns red, and additional improvements to the intersection to make those drivers aware that there is a crossing happening. So we believe that, and it's been proven with those Hawk systems, that they are an effective way to get traffic that's not used to stopping to stop and provide that passage for pedestrians.
Dylan, I just want to add one additional thing, and that's that the Hawk systems actually draw more attention to the pedestrian crossing. Everybody's used to a standard traffic signal with a red light. And usually when people are stopping, they're looking for cars, and pedestrians are almost an afterthought to many people. This Hawk system is dedicated for pedestrians. So it especially draws attention to those pedestrians, and the fact that it's a crossing of a different nature.
Thanks, Bob. That's good additional context. And Sherry, feel free to follow up if there's anything more that we can address there. I saw one question pop up in the chat, and I apologize, it's kind of harder to see the chat. So if folks do have questions or comments, please, I would just ask that you use the Q&A system. It pops up easier on our screen, so I'm not inadvertently missing somebody. But we had a good question that I'll throw to you first, Dylan. The question is, why is BASECAMP intersection in place anyway? RVs can use Ashley Meadows. So maybe a little bit about the access and what we're thinking there.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll take this one on first, and then again, probably pass it off to Bob here at the end. But the BASECAMP Drive intersection, as noted earlier in the presentation, was built out with the original concept of the bypass, and specifically this southern portion built in its interim condition. The roundabout was put in place really to accommodate the future development that was to be expected here on the south end of the bypass. And based upon the models and the traffic volumes and the development at the time when it was developed several decades ago, a multi-lane roundabout at this location was the preferred and chosen alternative. I think now, of course, you are seeing that development happen, specifically with, I think, the new RV park just off of BASECAMP Drive. And because the infrastructure, I think, is already in place at the US 93 Kalispell bypass intersection, along with this roundabout that does move traffic efficiently through the BASECAMP Drive intersection, likely that's the most beneficial and efficient way to still move traffic onto and off of BASECAMP Drive.
And a little bit further information about BASECAMP Drive. BASECAMP Drive, the roundabout was originally installed as part of the long-term planning with the city of Kalispell, recognizing that there's a large undeveloped area. That roundabout is not designed simply for the RV park. There's going to be another leg that goes to the north, and the likelihood is there's going to literally be hundreds of homes and residents in the area off the north leg of that roundabout, as well as there's already a potential for another subdivision behind the RV park to the south. And the challenge is that Ashley Meadows, while it does provide access to Highway 93, that's a very challenging place to pull out of and make a left. A left out of that intersection, especially with traffic numbers climbing, is going to be challenging. So those subdivisions are being designed, and the intent is that the access to the transportation grid, the network, will be through the BASECAMP Drive roundabout.
Great, thank you both. I think that answered that pretty darn well, and I don't see anything else. There's a comment from Sherry that I'm just working on responding to right now, but otherwise, I think that about wraps us up.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everyone. These are great questions. Great conversation. Appreciate your time. Again, the project team is here to answer questions and hear feedback. So feel free to pop a question or a comment or anything you prefer in the Q&A chat box, and we will just hang out for a few minutes and make sure everyone has questions answered. Or if you want me to go back to a slide to look at it, I certainly can do that. So I will just mute myself and we'll hang tight for a few minutes and see if others have questions. We are done with the presentation portion of the meeting though. So if you don't have other questions, you're more than welcome to take off. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you that are going to hop off, I want to just mention once again, the in-person open house is tomorrow from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Hampton Inn. And folks that you see on the call today and a couple additional team members will be present. So we really encourage you to attend or tell your neighbors, tell your friends if they weren't able to make today. And again, I'll say this one more time, we're also going to post this on the webpage if you want to revisit. So with that, I'll mute myself and we will hang out for a few minutes. Feel free to pop in questions and we are here to answer them.
I have another question coming in from Michael. So this is a good one for you, Dylan. He is wondering if the airport road and base camp construction will be completed before the homes in the area are built or coordinated with the developers. So that might be you, and then over to Bob if needed.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have the ability to move projects at the speed that developers have to build homes. And so the challenge is the likelihood is that Airport Road, the developers are working towards solving the housing crisis in the valley right now. And I know that we're going to be 5 years or so before we're able to start doing something with Airport Road. The good news about the base camp road is that roundabout is constructed to a 4-lane or a 2 lanes in each direction configuration. So it's in place, that infrastructure is there, and the developers will be connecting their roads to the legs that are already constructed. So we're ready to handle that. The challenge will be completing that last segment around Airport Road. What it's like. Recognize that there are some challenges at Airport Road, but it hasn't seen the congestion yet like what we had at Foy's Lake a couple of years ago. So we have a little bit of wiggle room and capacity left at the Airport Road roundabout. We're not to the point where we were for those challenging couple hours every day up at Foy's Lake.
Thank you. Here, just double checking the chat too to make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't see anything else.
Thanks, Katie. We can hang out for a few more minutes. Thanks for those of you putting feedback in the chat. That's super helpful for us to gather. So again, we will sit tight. Feel free to put a question in, but thank you for being here. If you are taking off, we appreciate it. Okay, are you seeing anything else in the chat I'm not seeing, Katie? Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was just gonna say for anybody, if the one thing about these is it's a little challenging sometimes to get to what the heart of the intent of the question is. So I just want to encourage anyone that's there that if you do have questions, we will be available in person and be able to have some one-on-one time with individuals that want to discuss things further tomorrow as well.
Thanks, Bob. That's a great reminder. Katie, are there any questions in the chat I might be missing, or are we good?
Not from what oops, yep, we just got one. There's just a comment to suggest a left turn tunnel under 93 south from 93 north to the bypass northbound lane. So we can put that in with the other comments that we've received. So thank you for that. But otherwise, I think we are set to go.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate you taking an hour of your Tuesday to connect with us. Again, feel free to email me at Becca@Big Sky Public Relations if maybe your question wasn't answered, or if you think of something after the meeting. We're happy to help and excited about this project. So thank you for your time, and thank you to all the team members that have joined us today to answer questions. I will hang out just for another minute in case someone else has a last minute question, but otherwise everyone else can feel free to hop off. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Becca.